Hello, and welcome to Grim and Whim, unnerving tales to haunt, mystify, and spark curiosity. Let's be
curious together.
I tried on a new lipstick today, and this is how my hair dries naturally. And I looked in the mirror right before I was about to film, and I was like, I look like Bellatrix Lestrange from Harry Potter, which is definitely a vibe, and a vibe that I enjoy, so that's that. Today's episode will touch on topics such as death, amputated limbs, and even suicide. So if you aren't in the headspace to listen to that today, please be kind to your mind, and I'll see you in another episode. Today we will be looking into a strange phenomenon and a story that is so bizarre, it almost sounds like it's an urban legend. Since the year 2007, 21 severed human feet have been found washed ashore on the beaches of the Pacific Northwest. So that's Canada and then some of the northwestern states in the United States. This has left authorities and the locals who live near these beaches very confused and just baffled as to why and where these feet are coming and why so many have shown up. And the trend with these severed feet, which we'll get into later, is very bizarre. And so let's not waste any more time and let's get right into this bizarre phenomenon. The mystery began in the year 2007 when a young woman found a foot still in the sneaker, and it was washed ashore in the Pacific Northwest on an island called Jebediah Island. And the young woman who made the discovery was a tourist visiting the island from Washington. And she picked up the shoe and she saw a sock inside of it. And she initially thought that maybe there would be some kind of sea animal in there because she did see some kind of lump. But once she confronted what was actually in the shoe, she made the gruesome discovery that it wasn't any type of animal. It was actually human remains. At the time, not much was made of it. You know, the local news covered the story, but it didn't really make national headlines until another foot that belonged to a different person was found only 6 days later on a nearby island. And that's when the wider press began taking note. Since then, more and more feet have been found, still in the sneakers, and they have been found washing up on both Canada and the United States shores. And the feet come in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes it's the left foot, sometimes it's just right feet, and both female and male feet have been identified. Most of the feet have been confirmed to belong to adults, but there are a couple that are labeled as possibly a child. And even stranger, the feet, like I said, they're all secured in a sneaker, but the rest of the leg or any other body parts haven't washed up onto the shore. And so people are really confused why it's just the foot. And sometimes they do come in pairs. Typically, it is just single feet being found. But four of the 21 feet have belonged to two people. So there were two sets of feet found. And this brings the total of remains to 9 people's remains discovered, which is crazy. And 3 of those people were identified, but the rest, no one has any idea who the feet belong to. 3 of the people that have been identified by the remains, their deaths were attributed to natural causes. Some of those victims were local, and some of the victims they were believed to be suicidal during their lives. So some people think that perhaps it wasn't an accident or like a homicide or anything, but they actually took their own lives. And while this does explain a few of the victims, the rest have the local authorities and the communities asking, where are these feet coming from? Why are the feet that are found still wearing shoes? And is this phenomenon random, or is there something nefarious going on? And so today we're going to be looking at some of the theories that people have regarding these mysterious feet coming to shore. The theories surrounding this case range from plausible to absolutely ludicrous. But until we know the full truth, anything really is possible. Authorities have not been able to identify a suspect or cause of the feet washing up. And the last foot that was identified was in 2019. So there has been a bit of a hiatus. And who knows if the mystery will ever be solved. You know, there are a lot of reasons why these feet could be washing up. Some speculate that maybe the feet come from people who died in the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. Others theorize that maybe a serial killer is responsible, especially since there seems to be a pattern where it is feet contained in shoes. It could be a serial killer, very well could be. And maybe their thing is cutting up people's feet. I don't know. Other possibilities are everything from the remains of plane crash victims, animal attacks, and even alien abductions. Many people even believe that this whole thing is a hoax. But the remains are very much real. So if it's a prank, it's a pretty bad prank because these are real human remains. That being said, there have been pranksters over the years who have tried to replicate, this, mysterious incident with stuffing tennis shoes with animal remains, usually like an animal paw, because, if you put an animal paw into a shoe, it's going to look a little bit like, a human foot in a shoe. And these pranksters will then send these out to sea and hoping that somebody will discover them and bring them to law enforcement's attention. And the law enforcement has stated that they are going to prosecute any pranksters that attempt this. But some of the pranksters keep pushing the limits, and in 2011, multiple sneakers were discovered with raw meat stuffed inside them near Oak Bay Beach in British Columbia. I personally don't really understand why people do these things. Like, it kind of reminds me when there's like a missing persons case or a homicide, and there'll be people that come forward with information, or they'll even claim to have killed the person and are somehow involved or whatever, and they actually are just lying and they don't have information, or they actually weren't the person responsible, and they just want to be a part of the story, I guess. But it's pretty common. There are a lot of instances where people come forward and confess to things that they were not responsible for. And I don't know. No, I don't really think anybody knows why. So what exactly is happening with these feet being washed up upon the shore? Well, one element of this case is that people are considering whether or not the feet were attached to the person when they died. And while many have speculated and thrown out wild theories about the severed feet, there may actually be a practical solution as to why just the feet are washing up onto the shore. The scientists who have studied decomposition, they hypothesize that most of the feet separated from their corpses as they decompose. So we don't have like a serial killer who is maybe killing people and then chopping off their feet and throwing the feet into the ocean. It's more likely that the victims died with their feet still attached. The body then simply sinks to the depths of the sea. And a study back in 2007 really supports and adds some credibility to this theory. A forensic scientist named Gail Anderson of Simon Fraser University, she did a study on decomposition using pig carcasses in the Salish Sea, and she examined the effects of sea life and decomposition on the remains, because pig remains and human remains are fairly similar. And so they did this study, and the findings were that the sea creatures, they will basically strip the carcass in as little as 4 days, speeding up, the decomposition process. While researching this topic, I learned that our ankles are made up of mostly soft tissue, and I was pretty surprised to learn that. I thought that it was the opposite, but because they're made up of soft tissue, sea creatures are able to eat around the ankle, and then the foot will then detach from the rest of the leg. Then the feet will float up to the surface, and the tennis shoes kind of act like a buoy, and they kind of keep it from floating down to the rest of the ocean with, the rest of the body. And so that explains why there are severed feet washing up onto the shore, but we're not finding the rest of these body parts. And it's basically because the rest of the body parts have likely gone all the way to the bottom of the ocean, and they're never to be seen again. And sadly, a majority of the victims haven't been identified by the feet. So if other body parts, did come to the surface, maybe there would be a better chance of identifying who that person was. But like I said, there hasn't been any more feet washed ashore since 2019. But despite the fact that there has been a hiatus, the case is still ongoing, and they are still trying to identify as many victims of this mysterious phenomenon, so that way they're able to actually put them to rest and have a proper burial. What is still unclear to the scientists and the authorities and the communities where this is happening is it still doesn't quite answer what happened to the victims, and they are still unclear on whether or not these were accidental drownings, if they were the cause of the suicide, and the homicide theory is still not off the table. There still could be someone who killed these people and then threw them into the ocean, and only their feet came back up. And it's very sad, and I just wanted to put a trigger warning in right here regarding suicide. It's very sad, but near bodies of water, suicide is more common, and many of the locals believe that the feet that are washing up most likely believe that the feet are washing up after someone had, committed suicide by drowning, and, they went into the ocean or the sea and died by exposure. And with time and decomposition, the rest of their remains went to the bottom, and then the feet with the tennis shoes still came up. What is strange, though, is that all of the remains are wearing tennis shoes. I don't know. To me, that just seems really weird. And it's just an interesting trend that, I mean, I guess I know, wearing tennis shoes are popular, but I don't know. To me, it seems a little bit weird that every single one of the victims are wearing tennis shoes. And like I said, the authorities, scientists, and anybody who's looking into this case, they don't really have an answer as to why that might be. And once again, there are people who still think that this entire thing is the act of a serial killer. Either a serial killer with a foot fetish or a serial killer who, is just killing these people and throwing them into the ocean. And then, like I said, the bodies are just decomposing naturally. It's certainly a possibility. And like I said, we understand for the most part why just the feet are washing up, but it still doesn't really explain the cause of death. And I don't know if we're ever going to get a straightforward answer. I don't know if that's even be possible. And I think until we identify all the remains and start seeing maybe some trends there, it could just be left as a mystery for now. So with all that being said, I would love to hear your thoughts about this very strange mystery. Do you think authorities will ever fully uncover the mystery about these severed feet? Do you think that it is just random accidents or possibly suicide? Or do you think that there is some kind of weird serial killer out there up to no good and with a very specific way of getting rid of the victims? Let me know your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this strange case and the mystery surrounding it. I know it was kind of a little bit dark and maybe a little bit gross for some people, but I don't know. I find it really interesting. I think it's really cool when, I'm doing research on this weird case, and I ended up learning a lot about, decomposition and the human body and a little bit more about the ocean. And so I found it to be really enjoyable to do the research. And so I hope you learned something today. And if you liked this video, please be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's goodbye for now, but I hope to haunt you again soon.